I came to the airport and looked around. A man came up to me and asked if my name was Liushuang. I told him my name was Liushuang. He told me to follow him. The man walked over to a group of people and said, "I'm here." I wanted to ask him a question. The man asked if I was Liushuang and introduced himself as Manhwa. Wan Chiqian told him to wait for me here, and I thanked him for that. He understood why Wan Chiqian was so attached to me. I turned out to be a great beauty. After saying that, Manhwa turned around and left, asking me to follow him. I wondered why so many people were calling me beautiful lately. Even he said so. At that moment I looked up and saw myself in the airport mirror. I was surprised that I was so beautiful before. I realized it seemed like it all started then. The jewelry from Muson's house was drilled into my body. That's when I heard someone calling my name. I saw Manhwa waiting for me at the boarding gate. I awkwardly waved my hand to him. "I'll be right there." We boarded the plane one by one. The plane took off smoothly. I thought to myself that I can finally go home. Auntie Ching must be alright. At this time, the subordinate came to tell Manhwa Mo Sheng was looking for important women. Hearing this, I silently lowered my head. Manhwa became interested and asked the subordinate to check out the woman. After hearing this, the servant turned around and left. Manhwa was curious as to how I met Wan Chiqian. I answered honestly how we met at the airport. Manhwa was puzzled. Wan Chiqian is obviously a person who refuses to be seen by others. Manhwa was puzzled as to what kind of relationship the two of us had in the end. I told him to ask Wan Chiqian himself about this. After that I told him that I was tired and wanted to take a rest. Manhwa laughed. "I'm really a cunning girl." In the waiting hall of the airport, the staff explained to Mo Sheng. Mo Sheng seems to have realized something. Monitoring and shielding area. Could it be? Mo Sheng asked his subordinates to prepare a plane. He will go to S City in the morning. After saying that, Mo Sheng meaningfully silent for a while. Mo Sheng said he will definitely catch me in the S City airport. I thanked Manhwa and said goodbye. Manhwa handed me his business card and said I could call him if I needed anything here. I mischievously joked to him to take his card to make money. Manhwa laughed. "No matter what I do, he will get it back from Wan Chiqian." I was helpless. Messing with the heavenly master would be too much. He seemed to know my weaknesses. I told him that he's really a dark-hearted person. I said goodbye to him again and turned to leave. Manhwa had a grim look on his face and told his subordinates to follow me. I arrived at Auntie Ching's place. Auntie Oat said she had called the police but said it was hard to judge the situation. I wondered what someone was looking for in the house, but Oat J was very surprised. I said I knew Auntie Ching's habits and where she kept her things. Oat Ja said there was a phone call threatening that Auntie Ching could not be protected. The caller also told me to take care of the matter myself. I realized that Auntie Ching's only danger was me. Was she coming for me? I asked her. She said where the deal was. At that moment, Han Choyue pushed open the door and started questioning me. He didn't tell me anything. Do I still have him in my eyes? I looked at him with embarrassment. It seemed like I really needed his help this time. I told OJ to hurry up and tell me where the deal was. OJ sighed and said tonight at 10 o'clock at 13 Jiangning Road. I asked Han Choyue if he could get night vision goggles to see in the dark. I told him to let the lights go out for 10 seconds after I entered the room. Han Choyue wondered if my method was reliable and if 10 seconds was enough. I told him not to worry, just listen to me. In the evening, we arrived at the agreed-upon meeting place on time. Han Choyue told me to signal him if I felt something was wrong. His men were nearby. I hid a dagger in my sleeve. I told him to cut off the power in 5 minutes, and to do it again because there was a spare one. I let out a deep breath and walked towards the house. I wondered who kidnapped Auntie Ching and who was in the house. Just as I reached the door was opened from the inside. I looked at the person who opened the door with surprise. The person who opened the door was an old man who was blind in one eye. The old man looked at me and asked me to follow him. I thought for a while where I was. Then I raised my foot and followed the blind old man. When I got to the front, the old man opened a door and let me in. I looked at the person inside with surprise. A woman in red was sitting leisurely on a sofa surrounded by a group of people. On the other side of the building, the subordinate was introducing my identity and the purpose of my visit to Manhwa in detail. Xian Yuanheng wondered how an ordinary reporter like me could be surrounded by two big shots. Both of them have seen the world before. Is there something special about me? At this time, the subordinate reminded him that I had escaped from Mo Sheng's side twice before. Hearing this, Xian Yuanheng became interested and asked them to find me out. On the other side, inside the house at No. 13 Jiangning Road, the woman in red said I look great now. No wonder he Langming changed his mind. I was impatient. I haven't seen him since that day. How can he change his mind? The woman in red stood up and walked towards me, telling me not to play dumb. She scolded me and told me that if it wasn't for me, he wouldn't have left her. When she heard I was looking for Auntie Ching, she laughed and said she'd killed her long ago, until the woman in red said that Auntie Ching had said one thing before she died. I laughed and realized she was lying. Auntie Ching never called me that. The woman in red didn't care. She'd achieved her goal if I came. I was speechless. How could she treasure such a lousy man as Ho Long Ming? I asked him if he didn't feel cheap for going to such lengths for a man. 5 minutes had come and gone. I let the dagger out of my sleeve. After a hullabaloo, several people rushed to switch on the backup power supply. The bodyguards looked at me and the woman in red with surprise, only to see me putting the dagger against the woman in red's neck. I warned her not to move. If my hand shook, she'd be lost. The woman in red started to use her father's identity to pressure me. The woman in red panicked and told me that she left only a letter at the scene when she went there. I realized that this was indeed Auntie Ching's style of doing things, but I said I didn't believe her and started to lie to her. She said the letter was on her body. I laughed and pulled the letter out of her. She realized I was lying to her. I violently pushed her away. Such a stupid woman should be locked up by Ho Lang Ming. The woman in red turned to me and told me to wait. Before she could finish her sentence, I gradually disappeared from her face. The woman in red watched in horror as I disappeared in front of her. She shouted, "Ghost!" I plucked up the courage to ask Mo Sheng if he loved me. When he heard my question, Mo Sheng was stunned. After a moment's hesitation, he replied that he didn't love me. I was extremely shocked to hear him say he didn't love me. Mo Sheng, you don't love, you still say what you want me. A scum. Mo Sheng saw me resisting, domineering, said I was his person. I looked at him with a speechless face. A gunshot suddenly came from outside the door. Mo Sheng got up and told me to wait for him in the house, warned me not to try to escape. The airport station are guarded, said, turned and left. After Mo Sheng left, I pondered what was going on outside. My phone suddenly rang. I picked it up and asked Xiaojia what was wrong. I heard Xiaojia say that Auntie Ching had disappeared. When I heard that, I rushed to get my clothes. Xiaojia told me that she told me to find Auntie Ching in person, and that she was worried. I hung up the phone and rushed out. I had to go this time. I had to go no matter what. Even Mo Sheng couldn't stop me. Just as I was walking out of the corridor, a fierce man blocked my way. He turned round and asked me if I was Mo Sheng's woman. When I saw him pull out his gun, I immediately understood and explained that I was Mo Sheng's enemy. The man shot at me and I dodged. I managed to escape. I thought, the villa is full of enemies. Where's Mo Sheng and his man? I walked out of the villa. I saw a large group of people at the entrance. Leroy laughed and said, "The one who backstabbed you is the one who's on your pillow." At the same time, Fiona took out a tape recorder. She played the contents of the tape recorder. I hid in the dark and listened to Wang Boyi's voice in the tape recorder and was a little angry. After listening to the recording, I strolled towards the crowd. I opened my mouth and asked, "Is it so easy to plant evidence?" When Leroy saw me coming, he immediately stepped forward to make up for it. I looked at Mo Sheng with disdain and asked if I believed him. Musin didn't answer, but was angry at me for coming out. I was angry at him when I heard Musin's words. I broke out in a cold sweat and thought. FIA looked at us with jealousy and threatened Mo Sheng with her hands across her chest. Mo Sheng revealed a strange smile. Lak was shocked when he saw it. Then he realized that Mu Qingli wasn't there. Mu Qingli is always with Mo Sheng. Luckily, he thought there must be a trick. Then he shouted, "Go, let's go!" There was a crackling sound around the villa. At that moment, a bullet flew at me and Mushing quickly pushed me away. Mustn't let me go. Mo Sheng jerked his gun and said, "He's capable of winning the war." I got nervous and wanted to help him. Mosin stopped me from talking. He didn't want people to know I was invisible. At this time my men came to tell Mo Sheng that the villa had been cleared. Mo Sheng coldly told him to protect me. After that, Mo Sheng walked straight out. I was worried about Mo Sheng's safety and asked my men to help him. He told me they were wearing bulletproof vests. My men refused to leave, thinking I'd be a burden to them. Then I whispered to my men to protect Mo Sheng. When my men heard what I said, they were confused. When they looked back, they realized I'd disappeared. I ran down the road, out of breath. I stopped to catch my breath. At that moment I saw a taxi. I waved it down. I got in and told the driver to drive to the airport. I was worried about Mo Sheng's safety. Suddenly, I remembered that Mo Sheng said his men were guarding the airport. I thought about how to avoid his eyes. Looking for a way out, I saw Wanchek's mobile phone number. In the large villa, Wanchikian was lying in bed, dreaming. The housekeeper brought the phone to Wanyikian. Wanyikian answered the phone in a daze. I nervously said, "Excuse me." When Wanchikian heard my voice, he was instantly refreshed. Wanchikian was happy that I took the initiative to call him. I awkwardly asked him about his father's illness. I asked for Wanyikian's help. Wanyikian generously said, "What kind of help?" When I heard Wanyikian call me a little fox, I panicked. It's not true. Wanyikian knew I was a fox. I was in a cold sweat. After I got mad, I asked Wanyikian to arrange a safe passage for me to go home. Manjikian quickly agreed. I was puzzled and asked, "You didn't even ask what happened." Wanyikian laughed and said that if I asked him, he would do it without asking why. I whispered back a thank you. Then I hung up the phone. "Although you're very nice, I'm still afraid of you, my natural enemy." The sixth sense of the fox tribe tells me Wanchikian is hiding something. The battle outside the villa has been won or lost. Mu Qingli is leading the men to clean up the battlefield. Outnumbered, Fia chose to commit suicide. Mu Qingli told his men to take care of Lurch, who was captured alive. Mo Sheng sat on the sofa with a blank face and asked his guards where I was. When the guards said they didn't know, Mushing calmly asked them to leave. Mu Qingli was furious that Mushing was still thinking about me. Mu Qingli suspected. Mo Sheng is convinced that it's not. Mo Sheng said coldly to Mu Qingli, "I risked my life to save him last time." Mu Qingli didn't believe me and questioned the security. Mo Sheng replied that he knew how I escaped. Mu Qingli sighed and said that Mo Sheng was obsessed by me. The car was traveling on the road. I was worried about Mo Sheng's safety. I picked up my mobile phone to call Mo Sheng, but found there was no number for him. I was embarrassed that I hadn't heard from Mo Sheng after all this time. As I was staring at the phone in my hand, it rang. I was in a cold sweat. I calmed down and picked up the phone. Mo Sheng on the other end of the line was very upset and asked me where I was. I was so relieved to hear Mo Sheng's voice. He said, "I'm sorry, I have to go." Mo Sheng told me to come back. He was doing something for me. I replied in a cold voice that it was important and I had to go in person. "Since you're calling, let's make it clear. I don't like to be kept in captivity, not even if I have a lot of money. After all, we're not from the same world. Goodbye." When I hung up, I felt a little lonely. Mo Sheng was dumbfounded when he heard it.